From cricketer to crusader, playboy to politician, it's a fascinating story of charisma and ideals, of love found and lost, and a remarkable life lived as Pakistan's legend, Imran Khan. It's ages since we sat and talked, Imran.
That's right.
But I'm very happy to have you here tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure.
A lot has happened in your life. You've evolved, you've changed avatars, but I find that the image that remains embedded in people's minds is still Imran Khan, the cricketer. You've moved on, but public memory hasn't. So is it an advantage today or a disadvantage?
It's absolutely an advantage because, cricket gave me the profile that enabled me to do other things.
Yes, but cricketers entertain and you're on to very serious things. Does it affect the way people look at you?
Well, actually it depends on your credibility. Fame helps you in giving a name recognition, but it's really credibility that counts.
I know that you don't like to look back. You don't look at old family films or videos or albums.
That's true. It's been a trait in me since I left school, because I feel that your evolutionary process stops when you live in the past.
But today I want to take you back through the important phases of your life, which I feel have made you who you are today. So we'll go back.
Okay.
You join me. 21 years of passionate cricket. What trait or quality saw you through and steered you to the top?
I think the passion to succeed and the ability to take the knocks, the ability to pick myself up. I always believed I could win, and any chink that you saw, any chance you saw in winning, I would try and grab it and never give up till the end. So I guess if that was probably the quality that helped most.
You were also very ambitious even as a young boy.
Yeah, I was a dreamer, age of 9 onwards, I always dreamt that I had no doubts that I would play for Pakistan. It was just a question of when. And I always thought I would be, the youngest cricketer ever. And then when I played at 18, I had huge ambitions. I thought I would get 10 wickets in the match and score 100 runs. So it was nothing less than, the ultimate.
As a captain, Imran, you basically took a defeated Pakistani team and made them into winners. What went into it in that sense?
The problem we had was when I became the captain, every captain in Pakistan was scared of losing. So they would produce these dead wickets in Pakistan and play for a draw. When you are scared to lose, you do not learn how to win.
That's right.
And so whenever we would go abroad, we would just collapse under the pressure. Yeah. Most of cricket, unfortunately, we don't realize this, is in the mind.
Yes.
The mind is the key thing. When I started off, I thought talent was everything. As my career went on, I realized that it's mental strength which is the key, and your attitude, what the Australians have now. Yeah. You can see that they are fearless. Yeah. They do not fear defeat and they take chances. And you can see when the Indian team is playing, they have so much talent. But you can see that one team is just mentally much stronger than the other.
Imran, you also discovered new talent, didn't you?
Well, I discovered because I would sort of have scouts who would tell me that these certain players are doing well, so I would call them on a cricket camp. That's how Inzamam ul Haq was discovered. Inzamam had been playing 3-4 years of first-class cricket, hadn't done anything incredible. But one scout of mine kept telling me that, look, this guy has great talent. And it was my last year in cricket, and I saw him just for 5 minutes. And I told him that you would play next year in the World Cup. And when I took him the next year, the selector said, look, you're wasting your time. He's tested and we know he's a failure. He's too fat and all sorts of things. One selector resigned when I got him into the 14. So here is probably arguably one of the greatest Pakistani batsmen might not have played cricket.
Wasim is also one of your boys, right?
It's a sort of a dream story of every schoolboy dreams of that. He was inducted in the nets just to give practice to the already selected cricket squad going to New Zealand. And they discovered during the nets that he was better than the bowlers selected. That's how he got in. And I have to say that it was not very difficult to help him because he was just such a natural talent.
Lifting that World Cup in '92.
It was a great feeling because, you know, the people of Pakistan, you know, I have never seen them as happy as after the World Cup. You know, just to make so many people so happy, I mean, it's just incredible. Secondly, I knew it was my last match. I knew it's a privilege which God gives to very few people to leave the game with dignity.
At a peak. Also for you, it was, in a sense, mission accomplished. I made this team, I've taken them to the top. You never played with Sachin, did you?
No, I had more or less stopped bowling and I was just, you know, playing. I had only a year left.
How do you rate Sachin?
After Zahir Abbas, he's one of the finest timers of the ball I've seen.
And Gavaskar also.
Gavaskar was different to him. He was much more a technician. Gavaskar of his type was just a unique cricketer in cricket history. When you needed him, Gavaskar was there. Sachin is different. He's a stroke player, a timer of the ball, but he does not have the defense of Sunil Gavaskar. He hasn't won enough matches as his capability is.
Why hasn't he?
I don't know, you know. There are matches when you expect, you know, Sachin would win you a match because of his ability. It's actually a tribute to his genius. For instance, I think Inzamam ul Haq has won a lot of matches for Pakistan. And yet, you know, his name is not as big as Sachin.
In whom do you see potential today? Well, in India.
Irfan Pathan.
I knew you'd say that.
I mean, he very much reminds me of a young Wasim. You know, you can have all the talent, but if you do not have the character to translate that talent into performance, then it's wasted. Irfan has it. I mean, you know, he's a lion-hearted cricketer.
Imran, we know what you gave cricket. But what did cricket give you that shaped you as a person?
Oh, you know, incredible lessons. You see, the most important thing in life is to know how to take the knocks. To sort of feel so depressed one night that you don't want to wake up the next day. And yet you have to keep going, you know. People give up when they are defeated. At times they compromise on principles when they are defeated.
Very quickly.
If you can handle defeat, you know, you go higher in life. Also, I think, Simi, it made me get along with a bunch of people who I had sometimes nothing in common with. You know, but you all had to get along. The teamwork, the human interaction. Because I led a very privileged life and insulated life. So cricket changed all that.
But if you hadn't had those 21 years of cricket, what would you have missed in your growth and your character?
You know, this thing of revenge is what made me into a fast bowler. Because I wasn't fast initially. But whenever a batsman would hit me, this thing in me would, you know, this fire would start and I wanted to bowl extra fast. And that's how I became a fast bowler, because I wasn't...
It was your inner anger at
anger at being hit, you know, and so the desire to avenge. It started off like that. But then gradually, you know, you change, you know, you evolve. And as I got older, I became more and more forgiving. I mean, initially when some critic wrote about me, and I thought he was being unfair, I couldn't forgive him. You know, I wouldn't speak to the man for years sometimes. But as I got older, I actually found it very easy to forgive.
But you've had a pretty turbulent life ever since you gave up cricket. Would you look back at those cricket years as more peaceful and secure compared to what happened afterwards?
No, I look all my life as a struggle.
You feel that?
You know, there were ups and downs always. But then it also strengthened me, and you know, what you learn in adversity is no university can ever teach you.
Never. Imran, cricket made you into an international hero, but 1976 onwards, I think people started commenting more on your looks than on your cricketing abilities.
You know, I never thought I grew up with my older sister always telling me that you're so ugly. You know, you are. She would always tease me about my looks, and so I assumed that I was ugly. And so when I first heard about it, it came as a real surprise to me. And then I felt that perhaps whenever people are successful in anything, they become, even ugly people start looking good. So,
Which sister is this?
My older sister, Rubina.
So when did you discover that Rubina's got it all wrong?
I was never sort of those guys who ever thought that, you know, who was secure of his looks. I always thought that, you know, other people were better looking, and I think this is, most people perhaps grow up like that. And I think that's a good thing, because, you know, if you ever think that you're good looking and, you know, people then rely too much on their looks, it's a very insecure way of living. Yeah. Men or women who I thought were attractive always had attractive personalities. You know, looks by themselves, you know, after a while actually doesn't go very far.
But the effect that you had on women, I mean, was amazing. It was like mass hysteria, craze, lobbies filled with college girls being mobbed. You could never go out through the main entrance. You were always taken through the back door entrance. I mean, all this, it was like rock star treatment that you had, and all over the world. Australia, England, India, Pakistan, everywhere. That must have been hugely flattering.
I mean, who wouldn't appreciate sort of being appreciated like that? But you know, it never occurred to me that this was because I was good looking.
You never looked in the mirror, Imran?
I think most people, when they look at the mirror, they look at imperfections rather than perfections.
A lot of people thought that it made you arrogant.
I think it's because I was shy. I mean, I told you that, you know, I always
thought you were ugly.
grew up with that, and I think people misconstrued that as arrogance. I always have felt that, you know, arrogant people are the most unattractive people.
And what were men's attitude towards you?
Well, jealousy, you know, my own contemporaries were always jealous.
Threatened.
I would find people sort of saying nasty things, you know, for no reason. And I would think, why? When I was younger, I would always find boys my age trying to pick a fight with me. But later on, I sort of understood the phenomena and dealt with it.
You dated some of the most glamorous women of those times, movie stars, models. Emma Sargent, the painter. They were obviously attracted to you. Were you attracted to them because of their glamour?
You know, it's a very complex thing, attraction. What attracts one person to the other? There can be some very glamorous people who could be very unattractive, for me anyway, because, you know, they become very self-centered, self-obsessed, actually quite boring. It actually is the personality which is the key.
Through these relationships, was there any emotional connection, or was it just fun?
Every relationship is different. You know, you can't say, I don't even know which relationships you mean, because it was so long ago now. You know, I mean, I'm quite ancient now, and I hardly remember. I mean, obviously, you know, in human relationships, emotions come in, but only then a relationship is sustained. And remember, I was a nomad. You know, I hardly stayed in one place long enough, so it was difficult to sustain relationships. But let me just say one thing. Look, there was a point in my life I began to discover, you know, the whole playboy scenario and relationships. You know, they caused me far more headaches than the fun I got. The pleasure aspect was diminished by all the complications which, you know, casual friendships, casual relationships, even relationships which, you know, were not going anywhere, but you had relationships. There was a point in my life I discovered that, you know, I felt empty with that sort of life.
I understand. Also, Imran, you were the only Asian bachelor to have had an entree into a very exclusive, glitzy international social circuit. How did that happen?
In London, of course, the friends I had, some of them way back from university, were sort of part of that set. So I guess I got into it. But, you know, I was still an outsider, because I would never become part of a jet set. For me, social life, you know, when I was in England for a couple of months, I would enjoy it. But then I was an outsider gone, and I always had a passion, which was cricket at the time. And, you know, I wouldn't drink alcohol, and so, you know, for me, parties would get quite tedious after a while. You have to have the stamina to be that sort of a person. I never was. You know, because I have always been motivated by some passion.
Yeah.
So that has been my focus in life. Everything else is peripheral.
Your life changed in 1985 when your mother was ill with cancer.
You know, she's someone I loved the most. She had the greatest influence on my life. And then I saw her in the greatest pain and die, you know, and that changed me. You know, there was no greater love than her love for, you know, the love she gave me. Unconditional love. You know, she was in her last stages. And my two sisters would, you know, I would be with her all day and then they would sleep next to her at night. And in the middle of the night, she suddenly woke up in extreme pain. And she was still in a semi-coma. And so immediately the sisters said, look, let's get Imran. And you know, in her state, in the state she was, she said, no, don't get him. He's tired. You know, so it is that sort of love. You know, I mean, how can you explain that love?
So when you decided to build this cancer hospital, was it one moment or a series of moments?
It was one moment when I saw her in this pain. And I was waiting for this doctor outside his surgery. This old man walks in, a slip in his hand, and he asks the assistant, he says, have I bought all the medicine? And the guy said, no, you still need one more. And I saw this man, this face just went into a depression and he just went out. And I asked the assistant, I said, what's the problem? He said, this guy's brother is dying of cancer. And he has brought him from 100 miles from somewhere and there's no bed in the hospital, so he's got him he's lying on the floor. All day he labors and then comes back and sits with him all night. And he labors to buy him medicine. So, you know, that, you know, because of my own situation, that became a turning point. And I thought, you know, here am I, privileged, everything. I have, you know, no shortage. And look at what I'm going through. What must he be going through? So that was the, you know, beginning when I thought I would build a cancer hospital where a poor man can walk in. And if he doesn't have any money, he should not worry about, you know, having a loved one being treated free.
Sure. But I remember at that time when we heard, a lot of people said, oh, he's dreaming, you know, it'll never happen.
For 8 years I heard that.
You heard. Did you really think it was possible? Single-handedly? I mean, you don't have an empire behind you.
You know, I never thought it was impossible. Just like today, I never think it's impossible that I would one day form government. Imagine having 10 million rupees in the bank and you start a 700 million rupees project. And not for one day did the project stop because of shortage of money.
Amazing.
Each time the crisis would come, you know, a strange incidents would happen. A woman would turn up and say, look, you know, my husband died of cancer. This is the property I want to donate to the hospital. And it just went on and on like that.
But yours was the single largest private donation. What about your friends? Did they help?
You know, I always believe that, you know, you should never put pressure on your friends. You should have friends, but never need them. Never test their friendship.
Knowing you, for you to ask somebody for money must have been very embarrassing.
You know, I never asked my father for money because I always felt you compromise your dignity when you ask for money, even if it's as close a relationship as your father. So for me then to go all over the country asking people for money was, you know, an incredible experience. The greatest lesson I discovered was that generosity has nothing to do with one's bank balance. Generous people, it's a state of mind. It doesn't follow that if you're rich, you're generous. So in the end, we needed $4 million to open the hospital. And I had gone all over the world. Wherever there were Pakistani communities, I went to collect
fundraisers. Money. I remember in London.
And then people were sick of me looking at me because they knew, here is he again asking for funds. And I ran out of, you know, there was donors fatigue. I thought, you know, all I can now do is went to 29 cities in 6 weeks in an open van with a big box, collection box. And we collected $5 million.
But it must have been a mind-blowing experience.
It changed me as a human being. I mean, let me say, initially I did not donate this much money. I was not a charitable person. I'm ashamed to admit that, because that's what sports does to you. There are no prizes for coming second. You're ruthless. You have to squash your opponent. It kills all compassion from you. It certainly did in me. And so, I gave a little bit of money, but I wasn't the main donor in the beginning. But when I saw these poor people giving money, I saw T-boys, watching me come in this van and take everything out and giving it. People taking off their watches. So I thought, I felt ashamed. So that's when I gave almost half of whatever I had, I gave to the hospital. And gradually I became the biggest donor.
So on the 29th of December, the doors of the Shaukat Khanum Hospital opened.
It was a sort of feeling of triumph within the country, It was almost like another World Cup winning,
The way I look at it, each brick, each wall, each room was a testament of your struggle.
It was the greatest thing I felt I'd ever done.
And 85% of the patients are free.
And bear in mind, the doctors do not discriminate amongst paying and free patients.
That is stunning. What an achievement, single-handedly.
But God helps. Actually, my spiritual evolution really took pace at this time. I was never an agnostic, but my faith was not that strong. But as the hospital was being built, I began to realize that it's not me. It's a higher force that is helping me. I realized my limitations, and I realized that this is just too big for me. But God helps you.
Yeah.
There was intense attraction. I just knew that she was the person, who I liked and who I wanted to marry. I knew that it would be difficult for her. She had to, understand a culture. I mean, nothing in my life compares to that.
I continue my rendezvous with Imran. He, the handsome, charismatic Pakistan cricket hero. She, the beautiful young British heiress. Their pairing ignited and dazzled the world, and the story of Imran Khan and Jemima Goldsmith began. In 1995, Imran, you decided to marry. Was it the right time or the right girl?
No, the time had been right for a few years, but it was the right girl. I knew Jemima's brothers, half-brothers.
But you never met her?
I'd known them for a long time, but I hadn't met her.
So how did you meet?
In a dinner party.
Really, that's strange, because India Jane told me, her sister, she told me, I've set it all up. That I want Imran to go and meet Jemima. And I'm just working on it. And let's just keep our fingers crossed and something will work out.
Well, I had already met her before India Jane came up with this plan.
And
no, I thought she was extremely attractive.
Very gorgeous. If there is such a thing as love at first sight, was it love at first sight?
You see, it's love again is so ambiguous. I mean, it fuses into various things. But yes, there was intense attraction.
And when did you know in your mind that you wanted to marry her?
Very quickly, actually. Just in a few, 2, 3. We hardly met. From the time we first sort of got to know each other to the time we married was 6 months. Yeah. And in that time also, we met intermittently. I was in Pakistan and, she was in England.
She said it was at the third meeting that you talked of marriage.
Yeah, it was very quick. I just knew that, she was the person, who I liked and who I wanted to marry.
And she said also that that you said very clearly that you were not interested in having an affair at that stage of your life, that it was only marriage that you were looking at.
I'd become disillusioned by the sort of a bachelor life, which, seems very glamorous and there's a lot of glitter and from the outside it looks wonderful. But actually, I found there was a lot more headaches in it, emptiness. Whereas, marriage life, for all its problems, you actually feel happiness in it, real happiness. Might not have those highs and which you have as a bachelor, but actually it gives you much deeper happiness.
Jemima has said that there wasn't a second that she doubted that she was going to marry you or thought that it was the wrong thing to do. Did you have any qualms, Imran?
No. Well, no, you have qualms. I mean, there are doubts in everything you do. But then, again, it's not in my nature. If I really want something, then I have always gone for it. I'm not the one who worries too much about the downside. I'm a risk taker.
But in your case, there were many factors that were in conflict.
Yeah, there were.
They were?
There were. Main factor being that, she was not Pakistani, and I had one thing I had never any doubt about, that my life was in Pakistan.
Yeah.
I knew that it would be difficult for her. But it wasn't going, just because it was going to be difficult, wasn't going to stop me from, or stop us from trying to make it work.
And she decided she would come along and live with you in Pakistan.
That's right. She had come to Pakistan thrice before we got married.
Oh, she did, just to have a look at the place, get the feel of it.
And meet my family. And she loved it. But then, again, visiting is different to living in somewhere.
Yeah. Then the second was, she was born from a Jewish background, and she had to change her religion.
That never bothered me.
So it was her decision?
Yeah, it was her decision to change, because, as a Muslim, I can marry a Jew or a Christian.
Then why did she convert?
Because, she read on Islam, she read the Quran, and she decided to convert.
After meeting you?
Yeah, after meeting me. In these 6 months of us knowing each other, she was interested, and she did her own research.
And who thought of this name, Haika?
There was never any such name, Haika.
What do you mean?
This was just all made up. Jemima never changed her name. She was always Jemima.
Another factor was the age factor. She was 21 and you were 42. Didn't worry you?
Didn't worry me,
You brushed it all aside.
It didn't worry me because, she was intelligent. She was far more mature for her age.
Yes.
And so, it didn't bother me. It might have bothered her, but then you've got to ask her that.
No, I'm sure it didn't bother her. So you got married in May 1995?
That's right.
Whatever the differences, I think you made a dazzling couple. Caught the imagination of the world. And the curiosity never stopped.
That's true, and always people thought it wouldn't work. And for not 1 minute did I think that it would not work. I always thought it would work.
What did your family think about bringing home a foreign wife?
No, there was a huge shock, because you see, while we were sort of thinking of marriage, no one knew about it, because we were never going out as such. No one knew, so it suddenly came as a shock to everyone, because it's suddenly one day we were married. And so everyone, including not my immediate family, but my extended family, they also got a huge shock.
I heard a story that one of the aunts, when a relative introduced Jemima to one of the aunts, she said, well, just don't mind her, she's just recovered from the shock. And the aunt said, who said I've recovered?
Yes, and yet that aunt of mine who's still alive, she loved Jemima most of all.
Yeah.
They all loved her. Jemima became part of the family.
So then, the next phase of your life began.
That's right.
So, back in Lahore, was it easy for you to adjust to marriage? Because you must have been fairly set in your ways.
It was something completely different.
But as a husband, now you were taking on a new role which you'd never taken before. You were a husband now. Was that hard to adjust to? Now you're responsible for somebody. You have to account for your time. There are different elements have come into your life. How did you take to that?
It was difficult. It wasn't easy. And everything came together at that time. You know, there was the hospital, there was this political party, and then there was this marriage. I found it very difficult to, you know, manage my time. And, you know, obviously I wanted to spend most time with my wife, but, you know, it was difficult.
But the transition for her must have been more difficult.
Yes, very difficult for
Because
her.
here she's not just adjusting to marriage, she's adjusting to a new continent and a culture and language, food, everything.
And also, of course, you know, someone from her background, you know, she grew up in such comfort and, you know, such an easy, unexposed life. She had to learn Urdu.
मैं अभी उर्दू सीख रही हूँ, इसलिए अगर कोई लफ्ज़ या लहजे में गलती हो जाए तो मुझे माफ़ कर दीजिए.
She had to, you know, understand a culture. She had to live in an extended family. And it was, you know, I must say she really did a great job.
I'm amazed how she did it. I mean, even an Indian girl would find it hard to adjust.
Even Pakistani girls who've grown up in England, when they come back to Pakistan and marry Pakistanis, they find it difficult.
What was hardest for her, Imran?
I think she missed her family and her friends. That always is the hardest. You know, it's very difficult to make close friends quickly. When I went to England first time, that was the hardest thing. I missed my cousins who I grew up with. I missed those close friends in school who I'd spent 9 years with, who you want to confide and talk, you know.
Share
Somehow you miss that the most of all. And of course your family. So I think it was the same with her.
And now she was in a family, but it was a new family. And for you, they were your own family, but for her, they were still strangers who she had to get to know.
But they loved Jemima.
And also, it was a more modest lifestyle for a girl with her background, wasn't it?
Yes, obviously modest. And you know, here's me. I mean, I'm not a material person. You know, I mean, I can live anywhere. You know, I can live in a shack. For instance, I would love to live in the outdoors. I love farms. I love clean air. But actually, the house in which I live can be sort of modest and simple. The environment is much more important to me. And so for someone like her, you know, it was difficult, you know, the way I lived.
I know that when you got married, the hospital had just been completed. You gave most of your earnings as a cricketer to the hospital. Everything of value, your Mercedes, your cricket cup, your cricket bat, I believe you also gave. Now, as we said, you're not a materialistic man at all, and luxury doesn't matter to you. She was a multimillionairess. Why were you so adamant about not accepting financial assistance from her at all?
Because I would have found it so humiliating, you know. Her father once did offer, you know, that he would buy us a house. I just couldn't accept that. You know, Jemima knew, when she married me, she knew what I was. You know, and, you know, to me, to live off my wife, I mean, the idea was humiliating. So it would have also meant that I married her for her money. I just could not accept it. And I could never come to terms with it.
Now you had two sons, Suleiman and Qasim. What was fatherhood like for you?
The greatest experience of my life. I mean, nothing in my life compares to that. You know, when my sister used to say, you know, Imran, you should get married and have children. I said, look, your children are like my children. And she would turn around and say, look, you don't know what it is like to have your own children. And I didn't know. So the first time we had Suleiman, it just, you know, it was the most incredible experience. I loved every stage of my children, both of them. It has without doubt given me the greatest happiness.
And what sort of a father were you to them?
Completely hands-on father.
Actual childcare?
As much as I could, you know, but completely hands-on. Even when Suleiman was very young, there's outside our house is a forest, is a jungle. So I would always take him in the jungle and make him see wildlife or make him see trees, wilderness, nature, which is what stimulates me the most. So all things I loved, I would make sure that he appreciated them. And same with the younger one.
And you saw the world again through their eyes.
And yes, and every phase, them learning little bits, growing up, you know, everything was, was such a great experience.
changed you?
Yeah, it changed me. It changed me to the point that, you know, first of all, I have become, I cannot stand conflict, war. It made me a complete pacifist. You know, I'm totally anti-war now because, you know, when you see children suffer, you know, and once you become a father, you cannot bear it. You cannot bear children losing parents or parents losing children. So it made, in a lot of ways, it made me quite soft and compassionate.
Have you taught them cricket?
Unfortunately, they don't have much interest in cricket.
So they don't know what a great cricketer you've been?
The older one, you know, okay, now he's beginning to realize because other children tell him. But the younger one still doesn't register. He told his teacher that my father plays football.
This is Qasim told him?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Suleiman thinks that his father is as strong as an elephant, as brave as a lion, and as clever as a wolf. Right?
That's the mother taught them that.
The mother taught them that. The mother says the father taught them that. A year after your marriage, 1996, you launched the Tehreek-e-Insaf, which was actually a movement against corruption.
It's a movement for justice, Tehreek-e-Insaf, to have a just society and justice based on an independent, credible judicial system.
You had only 4 months' notice, Imran, before the elections were held. Your party was so new and so raw. Why did you decide to fight for the elections?
Well, again, you know, it's in my nature. I do not fear losing. I do not fear losing.
You don't fear it. That's
you know,
interesting.
and I'm always optimistic. And I always believe that even if you lose, failure teaches you much more than winning. Because failure completely exposes your weaknesses. It forces you to address the weaknesses if you want to move forward, not fighting.
Why did you want to join politics?
Well, because I came to the conclusion that if you want to change your society, there is no other way except politics. If I want to change, there's no point in sitting in dinner parties and every night talking about what's wrong with the society and getting depressed and going to sleep again and doing the same the next day. Must try and do something about it. The only way you could do anything about it was to go into politics.
Your transition to politics was not really surprising. But what surprised a lot of people, your friends and everybody who knew you, was this new avatar of a born-again Muslim politician, critical of Western influences. How did that come about?
It's not a question of born-again Muslim. It was not Islam. It was a cultural thing. I was trying to explain to people that Westernization is not modernization. They're two different things. You can modernize, but you don't have to Westernize. If you ape the West completely without critically analyzing its strengths and weaknesses, you might just get the negative side of it.
But you were critical of the Western lifestyle, of Western clothes, of the MTV generation. That the MTV generation doesn't necessarily have to ape the West as far as their family values are concerned. This is just an in thing, you know, dress like that or speak like that or eat food like that. And you seemed to be critical even of that at that stage.
No, I was critical particularly of the dress. That here is a small elite in Pakistan which wears westernized clothes. Yeah. Only the urban elite. The common children wear shalwar kameez and go to these public schools, who are told from very beginning that, you know, they are on the bottom of the social ladder and those other children are on the top of the social ladder. If you want to become like that, then you wear these clothes. It's just, it's a hang-up of colonialism. You know, the worst thing that colonialism does is it destroys the self-esteem of a nation. Tells them that, look, if you want to move ahead, you dress like the colonials, the masters. And unfortunately, India and Pakistan still suffers from that.
But coming from you, who had made his name from a colonial sport, who spent so much time in the West, married a Western woman, don't you think that this confused people about you, the media, the electorate? This is why, how can he say that to us?
But it had to come from someone like me, who actually had been through this privileged upbringing and was trying to tell people that, look, you know, in your own society, you're causing inferiority complex. And not on basis of intellect or modernization, but simply on appearances.
But like Gandhi says, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. Coming from you, this didn't ring true.
No, but I did change. I mean, it's only outside I don't wear Pakistani clothes because I feel embarrassed. People start looking at you. In England, for instance, if I wear shalwar kameez, everyone looks at you. So you feel a bit embarrassed.
I don't know, but I think that you created a misconception or a wrong perception of you, which I felt wasn't necessary.
Look, I mean, you can only try your best.
Yeah, you can only do your best.
If people, agree with you, some will agree, others won't.
Nobody, yeah.
But, Sibi, at times, you have to stand up for your convictions and you take a lot of flack for it.
Okay, so to go back, so you contested 9 seats. You lost all 9 and the deposit in 7. Did your detractors feel you're finished from politics?
Yes, they did. They thought that was it, They thought, actually, people thought that, I had some misconception that I would come into politics and, people would lift me on the shoulders and make me the Prime Minister. I never had any such illusions. I knew very well that, I had taken the untrodden path. So I could have joined one of the major parties and, and I was offered several times. So I always knew it was the long, hard road. But people thought because I had been thrashed, then I would just leave politics.
What did you do different the next time round?
Well, we supported General Musharraf because we felt that at the time that he genuinely wanted to bring true democracy to Pakistan and, a change, a reform, build institutions, do accountability of crooks. And so we supported him. But just 3 months before the elections, we realized that, he had no such intentions. So that's when we parted ways. But had we joined him, then, I was his nominee for the Prime Minister. We could have had 20-odd seats in Parliament, but that would have been with the help of the establishment. And then there would have been no chance of bringing about a change because you can't change by joining the status quo.
So you refused?
Yes, I did refuse and almost got eliminated because, the establishment is too powerful. A party like Nawaz Sharif's Muslim League got completely destroyed, a party that had held power for 15 years. That got barely 13 seats. So what chance had we got against this establishment?
But you came in as a Member of Parliament in October 2002.
That's right. I won my seat with a record amount of votes. And, I think that now we are in a position where we have a core people in our party which is ready now to move ahead. There was politics, the hospital pressure, and then, to give time to marriage too, which became very difficult. Our ways went different. That eroded our marriage in the end. What were our options? I could have left everything and then what? Go to England and then do what? And that's not the man she married. She would have lost respect for me. I would have lost respect for myself. People are tired of this conflict. People want peace, both sides of the border.
There's something about Imran, he reminds me of a fictional hero. He is a born aristocrat, a cricket champion, a leader of men, heartthrob of women, and a humanitarian. Equally at ease in a nightclub or in the solitude of wilderness. It's the stuff of legends. In our concluding rendezvous, Imran looks back at an estranged marriage and then beyond. Imran Khan. You said that politics is very tough for home life.
Yeah, unfortunately, as I got married, I not only had the hospital, but soon after I launched the political party. I was being pulled in all directions. Here was marriage and here someone coming from abroad. So a cross-cultural marriage needs more time.
Yeah.
Which became very difficult.
Didn't family life lose out completely?
Normally, had it been a Pakistani woman, it would not have been that tough because, you know, she would have had a family, friends, support. But because it was, you know, Jemima, it became difficult. But it was compounded by one other reason. I very naively assumed that, you know, when I was going into politics, that we would both campaign together, that she would be part of my political team. And so we would not spend time apart.
Yes.
But unfortunately, the moment I got into politics, the first thing the opposition did was, or my opponents did, was attack Jemima, that my marriage was part of a Zionist conspiracy. So that attack was, you know, was so powerful. I had underestimated in the beginning. I just couldn't take it seriously.
Because it's ludicrous. So
Yes.
one doesn't take
So
it seriously.
It's so bizarre that, you know, you can't think that, you know, there would be this whole drama to marry someone because it's part of some Zionist conspiracy. But unfortunately, so much money was put behind this attack that it started having an impact. And so I had to pull Jemima out of politics. You know, we had to keep her aside. So our ways went different. She was then, you know, and
waiting, and she was waiting for you
and
always.
yes, and I think that was
the beginning.
the fundamental flaw that took place in our that eroded our marriage in the end.
Because she said half the time she didn't even know where you were. She couldn't contact you. She couldn't reach you.
You know, you're campaigning in wild areas. How would she get in touch with me? In rural areas, my constituency, where, you know, where the phones, half the area wasn't covered by phones. So, yes, it was very tough for her.
But she started work on some aid projects for the Afghan refugees.
She once read a news item that these children had died of exposure in an Afghan refugee camp. So from then onwards, she started working to help these Afghan refugees and raised a lot of money for them. And so she tried to keep herself busy, but unfortunately it wasn't enough.
Also, Imran, let's face it, she had given up everything, her family, which she was very close to, her country, and everything. What for? For you, for the love of this man, for the attention of this man. And when she couldn't get that attention, what was it worth?
It's true. But remember one thing, Jemima also knew who she had married. You know, before our marriage, she knew that I was a dreamer. You know, that I had these big dreams for my country. But unfortunately, neither I nor her knew what this dream, chasing this dream would entail. And, you know, what were the options once we discovered that, you know, we couldn't spend as much time together as we ought to? What were our options? I could have left everything. And then what? Go to England? And then do what? And that's not the man she married. You know, she would have lost respect for me. I would have lost respect for myself. I can't imagine a purposeless existence. So what were the options now? Go to England, do nothing, and would our marriage have worked there? I doubt it.
Very difficult situation. This is what happens now when they say a bird and a fish can fall in love, but where will they live?
Yeah, but you know, I look at the positive side. I gained a lot out of it. She gained a lot out of it. Look at her, she's at the prime of her life now. She has both of us have the greatest blessings of God, our two children. And then she has experienced something which no girl from her background could possibly ever imagine to have experienced. And then what was the guarantee? Had she married an Englishman, would it have worked? I mean, as I said, everyone I have known in England, everyone, all my friends, my acquaintances, members of Jemima's family, all of them are divorced, one or two exceptions apart. So, you know, there are no guarantees in life. But, you know, you do not do something because it's going to be difficult. But, you know, if I was, you know, back there in 95, would I have done that again? Yes, I would have done it again.
You would have done it again.
I thought, you know, it was one of the greatest, happiest period of my life, mainly because of children, of course. But married life, I loved married life. But it's sad that I couldn't give it that much time. And because of really not giving it enough time, eventually we moved apart.
So what happened is she started spending more and more time in London.
Well, what happened was that after our second, the second election where we again had a, massive defeat,
Yeah.
I think she lost hope. She thought this was a never-ending battle and, I wouldn't get anywhere.
Really?
She was attacked again in that next election. The head of General Musharraf's King's Party, he launched a full-scale attack on her, calling her a student of Salman Rushdie,
yeah.
because she had read his book Shame, which was in a course. And I think she found it, someone who's shy and who's introverted and who doesn't like publicity. I just think she found it too much. And I think, and I was, these 5 weeks, I was traveling all over the country trying to save my party from elimination. And by the time I got back, I think, her spirit was broken. I think she had given up.
Oh. And that's when she packed up to
Yeah,
go.
that's when she decided to leave. I think both of us knew that once she moved to England that...
And that was straight after the 2002 elections.
That's right.
So as soon as you became a member of parliament, the marriage was going.
That's right.
Did she feel that you had put your political career before your marriage?
Well, firstly, it was not a political career. She knew it was a passion. I think she also knew that there was no way, if she took me away from the passion,
Did she try to? No.
I think, she hoped for a while, because when we lost the elections the first time, she said, look, it's too difficult. You're not going to be able to do it. So why don't you just, give up and let's lead a normal life. But she also realized that, it wasn't me. And, to expect someone else to feel the same passion for your country, that too is difficult. Would I feel the same passion for change in England? I've had the greatest admiration for the way she conducted herself, the way she tried. And I think she knew that I would go on till the end.
So she went away.
That's right.
When did divorce become a reality?
A year later, we discovered that, we'd reached a dead end and that there was no way out. But we still tried. We wanted to, give one last effort for the sake of our children, because both of us were petrified that what effect would it have. We loved them so much. So we tried one last time, and she came to Pakistan, and, on the children's Easter holidays. But, even during the holiday, we knew that, it was over.
So when she left after Easter, you knew that a divorce is inevitable?
Yeah.
How did she take it?
Same as me, tremendous sadness. It was a very difficult time for both of us. I think a very painful period, and yet, I look at it now and I think that even that pain is a positive experience. Because when you are in a lot of pain, you do a lot of soul searching. You dig inside yourself and ask questions, and constantly you're reviewing your life and you're asking questions and trying to find answers. And you come out of it much stronger, a much deeper person. And it's pointless having regrets. I never have regrets in life, because you try your best, and then whatever is the outcome, you accept it as the will of God.
You had an Islamic divorce?
That's right.
Yeah.
Islamic marriage and Islamic divorce.
Did it upset you when you saw photographs of her with Hugh Grant so soon afterwards?
You feel few emotions, but by the time we divorced, we, both of us knew that now we will try and make our own lives.
Oh.
You know that the other person, if it's not Hugh Grant, it'll be someone else, because she's a very attractive woman, so there will be some man. Once we are finished, she has to get on with her own life, just as I have to get on with my own life.
And you keep in touch?
Yes, we talk occasionally because of our children. But at the moment, we are intentionally leading our separate lives, because we have to build our own lives. So it's important for a certain phase that we go our different ways. But, both of us know that, we will be the probably closest of friends, because we have a deep bond.
Yeah.
Not because of our children, because of what we've been through together.
Sure. And what about the kids? Do they ask?
No, I think fortunately they've been quite insulated from everything that's happened, because we were already living apart, so it's not made any big difference to them. All the holidays they spend with me, and you know, I have open access. When I go to England, I see them.
So now when the nest is somewhat empty, how does it feel?
I've been through the worst phase, so I'm already adjusted, and so is she. But looking ahead, I have no plans right now of marriage. I would much rather prefer married life to the life of a single.
Really?
Because it's a superior life, you know. It's pleasure versus happiness. So, but then I would not take a chance unless I'm sure that someone can, you know, go with me on the road I'm on. Because I wouldn't want to put anyone through this again.
But Imran, do you really need a marriage? I'll tell you why. A man with such passions for so many other things, or for this politics or your hospital, where do you have the time and the attention for a marriage? Come on.
Maybe not.
You don't need it.
I think you need it for companionship. You know, I think everyone needs a companionship. And, you know, despite all its imperfections, I'm a strong believer in marriage. But again, I say that, you know, it's too difficult to predict what will happen. You know, as I said, all my life I thought I would marry a Pakistani girl. I ended up marrying an English girl. So I don't know what I'll do next. If I find the right person, I will get married. But if not, then I would not want to put anyone through this.
Now, what about the future?
Well, the future mainly is my children and politics, which basically means fighting for a pure democratic system in Pakistan. Unfortunately, that's eluded us. You've been much luckier in India that despite your imperfect democracies, you become a strong democracy. You know, you have a sitting government loses elections, an election commissioner which is powerful enough to make, you know, subdue a prime minister. That is why India has forged ahead of Pakistan in the last 14 years. And I'm a firm believer that there is no system better than democracy. Despite, as I said, all its imperfections, it is the only system that if given a chance, it has a self-corrective mechanism in it.
May I ask you why democracy hasn't taken root in Pakistan? Have you worked it out?
Well, we weren't fortunate enough to have our great leader, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, to stay longer. He died immediately after independence. And you were fortunate enough to have Jawaharlal Nehru, who set the ball rolling and, you know, built this democratic institutions. Bear in mind that most of the post-colonial world has not been able to come to terms with democracy because the colonial structure lends itself to always to military dictatorship or towards one-man rule or autocrats. So any adventurer can take over the system. You're very fortunate that you had a man, a leader, who was able to make that transition into democracy easier. In our country, our great leader died, and then we just faltered from one crisis to another until the military took over.
But do the people really want democracy?
People always want democracy.
Not always.
But the problem is that we've had poor democracy. When we've had poor democracies, because there was a first military intervention, the first martial law, people then started thinking that maybe that was a better phase.
Yeah. At least there was law and order.
So they started looking to the military again.
Yeah.
And that was a flaw. And here's me sitting here in front of you, who actually also thought that the latest General Musharraf's martial law was a good thing. And today, here I'm telling you that never again will I ever support a military takeover. Even if it is an angel dressed up as a general who comes to take over, I would not do it. Because when a military dictator comes over, he destroys the institutions. Main institution that takes a beating is the judicial system.
But when was the judicial system ever in functioning?
Or it was functional in
Under
the beginning.
whom?
When we first got independence.
That's
Yeah, but unfortunately there was this one decision by...
That's too long back. That's a different generation. The present generation of Pakistan do not know what is a democracy, so they don't ask for it. They're happy with the status quo because there's law and order. Things seem to be moving. Things seem to be fine.
It's not true, really. People are quite discontent.
There is less corruption.
When General Musharraf initially came to power, the corruption went down. Law and order improved. But today, corruption has skyrocketed. Because you see, countries are not ruled by one man. What is sustainable development is only through institutions.
Yeah.
You do not have individuals coming in and then assuming all power and think that this system will survive.
How else can he do it without assuming all power?
Well, put it this way, Simi. Were I in General Musharraf's place, what would I have done? I would have found 7 people in Pakistan of integrity and competence. 7 credible, competent people, and empowered them. If you do not have an independent, functional judiciary, you cannot have democracy in the country. Number 2, if your accountability is not independent,
For sure.
the main corrupt people are sitting in the government. They then become above law because the accountability is under them. And when the election commission is not independent, you cannot have free and fair elections. So if these 3 institutions could be strengthened by the military might, the military empowers these 3 institutions, sits back, allows the system to go on, Musharraf would have gone down as a hero in Pakistan.
How far do your political ambitions go?
Given the situation in Pakistan, my ambition is right now to be part of a joint opposition and head this movement for democracy. The entire opposition parties would have a consensus that these are the 3 things whoever comes to power they will enforce: independent judiciary, independent election commission, independent accountability. And that's my current ambition. Being an optimist, I have no doubt that one day I will succeed, I will come into power.
And if you come into power, how would the relationship between Pakistan and India fare?
Well, nothing was more surprising for me than watching the reaction of Pakistani public when Indian team toured Pakistan last April. I never thought in my lifetime I would see Pakistan losing on a Pakistani ground.
Yeah.
Indian supporters carrying Indian flags,
it's amazing.
cheered by Pakistani supporters. I never thought this would happen. What does that tell you? It tells you that the people are tired of this
For
conflict.
sure.
People want peace, both sides of the border.
Absolutely.
People realize that this conflict is a disaster for both the countries. And I think the people who capitalize from conflict, who capitalize from spreading hatred,
It's political.
they'll become marginalized.
Okay.
And I think that we will, resolve our differences. I was reading an extract from a book that Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, just 2 months before the partition, was thinking of buying land in Simla. So what he was planning was that he would, as the head of Pakistan, spend his some holidays in Simla.
Little did he know.
So little did we know that this would be the situation where we would be.
But Imran, can you personally drop the baggage that has plagued these 2 countries?
If Nelson Mandela and de Klerk could actually do the impossible, then make the transition from apartheid to, and it was a far more complex problem than what is the Kashmir issue. If they could make that transition, 2 leaders of vision could do it in this subcontinent.
Very good, I hope so. So now you're building another hospital in Karachi?
Also, started work on the university in my constituency, which is impoverished areas, Miawali, which is a very impoverished area in the country. Building schools there, 4 schools with various NGOs. So, yes, I'm doing my social work as well as now going to be involved in the political movement.
Well, there is a saying in the Upanishad, you are what your deep driving desire is. As is your desire, so is your will. As is your will, so is your deed. As is your deed, so is your destiny. I just hope you reach the summit of your destiny, of your expectations.
Thank you.
I wish you well. You know that.
Thank you, Simi.
I want to thank you so much for coming on my show. Love talking
It's
to you.
been a pleasure.
Thank you for this rendezvous.